All right. Today we're going to build a rectangle. We're going to build a couple of objects actually. And what I mean by that is last time we built rectangles. These rectangles were in memory, so we really couldn't see them per se. Uh, but we could see their attributes and interact with them. We can create two or three of them. So just a little quick review. An object is something you can create. It can be anything. A car, a chicken, a person, a shape. As long as you know the attributes and you can represent it, you can create whatever you want. I want to create a car. Well, what represents a car? You know, model, make, something very simplistic. It has wheels, other parts and pieces attached to it. What type of engine does it have? Uh, as long as I can represent those things with variables, which I can, I could create that. What else goes on an object? Well, typically you're going to have some attributes, which is those things. Uh, Probably some methods that will be used. If it's a car, it's going to drive. Maybe it has an attribute called gas, and as I drive, the gas goes down. Depending on the engine, maybe I can go a certain speed. Maybe there's an accelerate method that makes me go faster and faster, a brake method. Uh, if we're going to dumb it down even more, maybe a person. What attributes can be used to represent a person? Age, height, you know, complexion, eyes. Video game, you'd also have stats, health, that sort of thing. Anything you can think of, you can create as long as you know how to represent it. Now, we're going to build on the rectangle that we did before, but this time we're going to visually be able to see it. So, what we're going to need to do is create a rectangle, and I called my project show rectangle, and you should end up with a main, which is here. Now, before we do anything in the main, which we'll come back to in just a second, we're going to have to, I'll just comment that out, basically create the object first. So I'm using NetBeans, and I'll come over here, and you'll need to right-click, New Java Class. And I just called mine Rectangle. So on this default package, and you may have to drill down if you're not already drilled down. Right-click, New Java Class, Rectangle. And it will just create a blank class. It just says Rectangle. Now, I'm going to spread this out a little bit so you can see all of it. Now, our first step is to create the attributes. Now, I'm going to need to import a couple of things first for everything I need to do. So I'm going to import the color because our rectangles need a little color that we're going to create. Now, this time instead of creating something in memory, we're going to have something pop up on the screen that we can actually see. So hopefully they can give you more of an idea of how objects work. Now, I'm going to import this graphics in Graphics 2D because we're going to be drawing 2D graphics. And there are a couple other ways I could just dot star some of these and probably not have to do them individually, but this is a little more cleaner. A little cleaner. I'm going to import the JFrame and JPanel. Now, I'm importing these because, well, this is going to be a frame that we're going to put into a panel, or rather a panel we're putting into a frame. So it's going to create this and we're going to stick it in something so we can see it on the screen. Now when you create this, you should just have, after you've imported these at the top, just public class rectangle. You'll have to add the extends JPanel. This is us letting Java know that a rectangle is a panel, basically. You can think of a panel kind of like a piece of paper, and you would put that piece of paper in a frame that you would put on the wall. Now I have these three variables that I'm going to be using for my attributes. To represent a rectangle, length and width. That tells me how big it is. There's also color. Our rectangle is going to have a color. So we can have a blue or pink or red, yellow, whatever color we want to go along with the size. I can make it bigger, I can make it smaller, That's what these attributes represent. All right, now at this point, we'll move down to the constructor. Now, a constructor you see has quite a bit in here, but it's going to be called public rectangle, and rectangle portion here is going to be the same that you have over here. Capital R, capital R. If you lowercase it, it's going to have to be lowercase here. This name has to be the same as the class file up here. Now, I'm going to pass it, when I create a rectangle, the length, the width, and the color. Now, color is an RGB value, basically 255, 255, 255. 0 to 255 will represent any color you want in the spectrum. Now, this section here, this dot length equals length. Notice one's black, one's green. The green is this one up here. And I could, just make that an L and I wouldn't have to use this, but this basically just means this object's global variable up here. That's why the color is different. The black is the local variable, which is locally here. So we can actually use the same name, but one's global, one's local in this case. So I'm basically saying whatever length you give me, make the length that length. Whatever width, make this width that width. And whatever color, put that color in here. Now, the rest of this is just so we can actually see it on the screen. This all just sets the attributes to data. The Dre frame basically is a frame we're going to create, and the heading will be called rectangle, or the heading at the top. Now, the set default close operator, Java exit on close, just means when I close one of those rectangles, all of them are going to go away, basically. Frame.add this says leaking this in constructor. Honestly, it's fine. It's not going to mess with anything, so you don't have to worry about. Although I am curious, assign return value to new variable, configuring passing service. It's fine. For what we're doing, it's not going to hurt anything. So now, this just sets the size of the window. It's going to be, whatever the width is plus a little bit more, whatever the length is plus a little bit more, basically. And then I set visible to true. Otherwise, you won't see it. This is the constructor. So whenever I create a rectangle, it'll set the colors, the size, and then it'll create a pop-up, basically, with that color, that shape on it. Now, of course, in order to see it, I have to actually draw it on there first. This just pops open the window and adds this panel to it. But in order for this panel to have anything on it, we have to paint. So at the bottom of this, I have this paint component. Now the way paint component works, and this is a capital C, graphics G, it's something that automatically runs. Paint component just runs and displays whatever painting you're going to do on the screen. So this is all going to get painted on that panel, and then that panel, this file, will get added to the frame that's going to pop up. Super paint component, just basically telling who owns this paint component. The graphics card does. Now, I'm going to create a graphics 2D object called G, or G2D rather. This is kind of the same as when you make a new scanner. Scanner blah equals new scanner, blah. Now, the G2D is basically, you can think of it as a paintbrush. I take that paintbrush and I have to dip it in a color. So this dot set color puts it in a color. So whatever color I give it, in this case, that's the color I'm going to get back when I draw it. So the next step is to fill rect. It's also a draw rect, which doesn't put the color in the middle. It just puts an outline on it. But fill rect, this is the XY position on the screen, which means it's going to kind of appear in my upper left corner up here. The length and the width. And I have to force them to be ints because this only draws in ints. So this will fill the rectangle, And then, of course, this adds the panel to the frame so I can see it. So this will draw it on the screen, and then this will display it on the screen so we can see it. So let's see how that looks if I go over here to my show rectangle. And I'll just start at the beginning and scroll down here one more time for anyone who needs to copy anything down. And end rectangle at the end. All right, so the actual rectangle, or show rectangle. Now I imported this color because I'm going to use that to give it a color. And let's just create one rectangle. I'm going to call it rectangle because it's capital R, R2 equals new rectangle 300 by 200. And notice I say color dot red. If I say color dot, you'll see a whole list of different colors that are kind of built in. And I just say color dot red. And if I run this, you should see, partially, a rectangle of that size. There we go. I created an object. Now if I adjust this a little bit, let's say 100 by 100. It's a little too small for me to move. I'm going to have to make it bigger. A little bigger on the window. There we go. The problem with making them too small is they're like this, and there's nowhere for me to click to move it. So there you go, a 100 by 100 window. Now, of course, you can play with the colors, you can play with the sizes, and you kind of see how that works. I can make 3 or 4 of these if I want, and just kind of copy and paste this. R3. This will be blue, and we'll make it, all caps. There we go, and I'll make the other one 3 by 3, and this 4 by 4. And we run it, and you will see I have 2 mighty rectangles that I created. This works the same way in a game when you're spawning enemies or zombies. I use this one constructor to make different ones. Rawr, and they go across the screen and get shot and they die and then they get spawned again. Typically, it's the exact same object. There's no reason to create a new one when you can just reuse the other ones. Same is true with bullets. I have an array of bullets. Maybe I can fire 10 or 20 of them at a time. Uh, so 20 before they go off the screen. I don't need to make a million bullets. That's going to waste a lot of memory. I just need 20. And as soon as it gets off the screen, I put it back in the array and disable it, and then fire it from the gun again, that same bullet. Of course, the player doesn't know this, but you kind of get the idea. Now let's say I wanted to do this, add a little more interest to this. We can actually randomize the size and the color if we want. So I've got 2 randoms here. They're going to random the size between 0 and 199 for the length and the width. I've also got random colors, 0 to 255, RGB. And I just plug those in there. And if you prefer, RGB, there we go. And I just simply draw it with that color. So this is a for loop that's going to loop 10 times, 0 to 9. I'm going to create a random rectangle. I'm going to create random colors, RGB values, and that's what makes up a color. It's actually a number, a number, a number. And then I just make a rectangle. And then I can make several of them. So let's zoom out and see how this looks. If I run this, boop. All right, I know it's kind of off my screen here, but I'll try to pull them all out so you can see them. Probably should have made them a little bit bigger, so I won't have to resize them, but you kind of see all the different rectangles that I've created up here. Doot. And I've created 10 total, different colors, different sizes, like that. And ta-da. And I'm actually still kind of going up here. Actually, I don't know what that is. I think that's, oh, it's just really tiny, I think. There's definitely a rectangle there. It's just really small. But you see, I could do this a couple of times and I'll get different colors, different shapes, different sizes. This is kind of how you would do like a simple rogue-like type thing where, everything's kind of randomized, at least to a certain extent. And now I've got numerous rectangles. Different colors, different sizes. Now if I close one of these, they're all going to close because I have that exit on close. It shuts down Java basically when I hit the X. And as you can see, rectangles galore. And of course, I could, if I so chose, go in here and do this uh, way more. Like for example, I could make a million of them pop up. I don't know if I would do that, but you could even randomize the location if you wanted to go back here. Instead of 0, 0, you could adjust where it's going to show up at. Uh, my screen's 1980 by 1020 or whatever. I could use that to kind of put it in the center of the screen if I wanted to, but normally the upper left corner is more than enough for me. But that's roughly how you would create objects that you can actually visually see. Hopefully that makes it a little more interesting, a little more easier to understand. Every object I create, you actually got to see it appear on the screen when I created it. The same would be true for any game, any program. I create a sword, there it is. You can visually see the graphic of it. Uh, and we could do that too if we wanted to. You can, like I said, literally make anything once you know how to create objects. All right, I hope you enjoyed that, and that is the end of our rectangle visual object tutorial.